The person who just congratulated you does not want you to succeed, not fully, not in the way they are performing it right now with their smile and their well-chosen words and the specific quality of warmth they are producing for your benefit in this exact moment. Somewhere beneath all of that is something else, something they would never say out loud, something they may not even be fully conscious of themselves. And the most unsettling part of what I'm about to tell you is not that people hide envy. Everyone knows that people hide envy. The most unsettling part is what Carl Jung discovered about how it leaks out anyway. Invisibly, consistently, in patterns so specific and so predictable that once you understand them, you will never be able to enter a room without reading them. Stay with me. Because what Jung's research revealed about the shadow's relationship with jealousy, specifically about how it operates in the people closest to you, is going to fundamentally change who you trust with your victories. And by the end of this, you will understand why the empath who finally learns to see this does not become paranoid. They become untouchable. Carl Jung said that envy is the shadow's fingerprint. It leaves traces everywhere, but only those with genuine emotional depth can see them. Most people think jealousy looks like criticism, like snide comments or open resentment or the obvious cold shoulder of someone who has clearly decided they do not like where your life is going. But Jung spent decades documenting something far more sophisticated than that. He said that the most dangerous jealousy is the kind that comes dressed as love, and nowhere does it land more precisely than in the nervous system of someone who feels everything. You see, most people think empaths struggle because they feel too much. But Jung's research revealed something that turns that assumption completely upside down. Here is what nobody tells empaths about the hidden jealousy in their closest relationships. And trust me, by the end of this, you will start seeing people you thought you knew in an entirely different light. According to Carl Jung, every person carries within them what he called the shadow, the unconscious part of the personality that contains everything the ego refuses to acknowledge, the fears it cannot admit, the desires it cannot justify, the comparisons it makes in private that it would be mortified to speak out loud. And one of the most consistent contents of the shadow is this: the specific pain of wanting what someone else has, not wanting it in the clean way of genuine admiration that motivates growth, wanting it in the way that produces a quiet and often completely unconscious resentment of the person who already has it. Jung called this shadow envy, and he was precise about what makes it so difficult to detect. The ego cannot tolerate the knowledge that it is jealous. Jealousy conflicts with the self-image of being a good person, a loving person, a generous person, a person who celebrates rather than resents. So the ego does something remarkable. It represses the envy so thoroughly that the person carrying it genuinely does not know it is there. They are not performing care while secretly wishing for your failure. From their conscious perspective, they care about you completely, but the shadow knows, and the shadow expresses itself whether the conscious mind cooperates or not. Jung called this unconscious compensation. When something is suppressed deeply enough, the psyche finds an outlet for it, not through obvious hostility, through a specific and consistent set of behavioral patterns that the empath registers as wrong before they can explain why. Here is what it looks like in practice. You share something significant with someone who claims to care about you, a promotion, a new relationship, a breakthrough in a direction you have been working toward for longer than feels comfortable to admit. And instead of the celebration you expected, something happens that does not quite compute. The response is slightly delayed, or it arrives at full emotional volume, but then drops off faster than it should. Or the conversation shifts almost immediately back to the other person. Or the congratulations comes with something attached, a qualification, a concern, a gentle introduction of doubt that is packaged as care but lands like a weight on exactly the thing you were hoping to feel lighter about. I'm just worried about you. I only say this because I want you to be realistic. Are you sure you're ready for this? I wouldn't want to see you get hurt. Jung called this the mask of benevolence, the shadow wearing the persona of concern in order to deliver its true content without detection. And what makes it so effective, what makes it so difficult to name even when you are inside it, is that the person saying these things is not lying about their care. They genuinely care about you. The concern is real, but inside the concern is something else, something that sounds like protection but functions like interference. something that introduces just enough uncertainty into your momentum that you hesitate, reconsider, and slowly contract back toward a size that stops highlighting their own stagnation by comparison. And the most disturbing thing Jung observed about this, the person doing it has no conscious idea that this is what is happening. They believe completely that they are helping. But here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. And this is where Jung's research becomes something empaths specifically need to understand. Because the empath does not just hear the words, they feel the intention underneath them. Jung identified what he called the dominant feeling function in highly sensitive individuals, the specific psychological capacity to register the emotional undercurrent of an interaction rather than simply processing its surface content. The empath hears "be careful because I love you," and simultaneously feels something that does not match those words, a quality of hope in the concern that is oriented slightly in the wrong direction, a specific energetic quality that says "I am invested in your caution" in a way that goes beyond what genuine care would require. Not "be careful so you succeed, be careful so you might not." The empath cannot always put this into words immediately, but they feel it in the body, a tightness, a heaviness, the specific interior sensation of receiving something that was packaged as warmth, but that has a different temperature underneath. Jung said that this perception, this specific ability to sense the gap between what is being communicated and what is actually being felt, is not imagination. It is one of the most sophisticated forms of interpersonal intelligence that exists, and in the context of hidden jealousy, it is the specific capacity that allows the empath to see what everyone else in the room is missing. But here is where the dynamic takes its darkest turn, and this is the part Jung documented with the most clinical precision. He said that the secretly jealous person does not just withdraw warmth, they become a distorted mirror. Jung believed that healthy relationships operate on what he called mutual psychological mirroring. When someone you genuinely love achieves something, when they grow, when they move towards something they have been reaching for, the authentic response of genuine love is to mirror that expansion back to them, to reflect their light with real warmth, to celebrate in a way that makes them feel seen rather than managed. But the person carrying shadow envy cannot do this, not because they choose not to, but because your expansion confronts them with something they cannot process consciously. The gap between where you are going and where they have been willing to go. The specific and painful evidence that what they have been telling themselves is not possible is, in you, becoming real. And so instead of mirroring your expansion, they distort it. Your achievement becomes something slightly smaller when they reference it. Your excitement becomes something slightly naive. Your trajectory becomes something that will probably run into difficulty they can see coming from their particular vantage point. They do not diminish you openly. They diminish you carefully, through comparison to someone who did it better, through the redirection of the conversation back to their own experiences, through a subtle flattening of your emotional temperature whenever it reaches the specific level where it would require genuine celebration. Jung called this narcissistic shadow defense, the ego protecting itself from the confrontation of your growth by finding ways to make your growth seem less significant than it would otherwise be. And the empath standing in front of this distorted mirror experiences something Jung described as psychologically disorienting. They brought something real, something genuine, something that required vulnerability to share. And what came back was a reflection that did not match. Not obviously wrong, just slightly off, in a way that leaves them feeling less than they felt before they shared it. And unable to explain precisely why, here is the layer most people never reach. And this is where Jung's work moves beyond diagnosis and into something genuinely useful. He said that the empath's recognition of hidden jealousy, their specific ability to perceive what is not being said, is not a burden. It is information. The question is what they do with it. Most empaths, when they first develop the capacity to read this pattern, make one of two errors. The first error is confrontation. They take the perception and bring it directly into the relationship through explicit acknowledgement. You are jealous of me. I can feel that you are not genuinely happy for me. And Jung observed that this almost always produces the opposite of what the empath is looking for. Because the consciously unaware jealous person is not hiding their envy. They genuinely do not know it is there. The confrontation does not produce the acknowledgement and resolution the empath needs. It produces defensiveness and denial, and the specific injury of being accused of something the accuser sincerely believes they are not doing. The second error is even more costly. The empath absorbs the distorted mirror as accurate. They internalize the qualified congratulations as evidence that their achievement was actually less than they thought. They take the subtle flattening of their excitement as a signal that the excitement was excessive. They allow the shadow envy of the person they trusted to shape their relationship with their own success, and in doing so, they give the shadow exactly what it was unconsciously trying to produce. Their diminishment. Jung said the correct response is neither of these. He called it conscious selection. Conscious selection is not withdrawal from relationship. It is a precise reorientation of what you share with whom. Jung observed that once the empath understands the mechanics of shadow envy, once they have the framework to recognize the distorted mirror for what it is, they naturally begin making different choices about where they bring their most significant experiences. Not out of bitterness, out of discernment. They stop bringing their victories to the people whose mirrors are distorted, not because they withdraw from those people entirely, but because they understand that asking a distorted mirror to reflect their achievement accurately is asking for something that mirror is structurally incapable of providing. And the empath who stops making that request stops experiencing the specific disorientation of receiving a reflection that does not match what they brought. They start becoming precise about who receives which parts of their interior life. And that precision, the conscious, unsentimental, completely compassionate act of matching what you share to the reflective capacity of the person you are sharing it with, is what Jung called psychological sovereignty in the relational field. The specific form of self-protection that does not require walls, because it does not need them. But here is the turn that changes everything. The one Jung found most remarkable about empaths who had fully integrated this understanding. He said that the empath who learns to read hidden jealousy does not just protect themselves from it. They begin to respond to it with something the jealous person almost never encounters from anyone: genuine compassion. Not the performed kind, not the kind that requires suppression of your own accurate perception to produce. The specific compassion that becomes available when you understand the psychological mechanism clearly enough to feel something for the person trapped inside it. Because here is what is true about shadow envy. The person carrying it is in pain, not the pain they are inflicting on the empath, their own pain. The specific and often excruciating pain of wanting something they have not given themselves permission to pursue, of watching someone else move toward it, of having no conscious access to the reason their joy at that movement keeps arriving with a strange aftertaste. They are not the villain of this story. They are a person in their own psychological prison, one they cannot see from the inside, one they would leave if they knew how. The empath who understands this does not look at the person and see an enemy. They look at the person and see someone who has not yet done the work that would set them free, and that seeing, precise and compassionate simultaneously, is exactly what Jung meant when he talked about the individuation of the empath. The specific development that happens when sensitivity is no longer just a capacity to absorb, but a capacity to understand. The empath who reaches this is not someone who has closed themselves off. They are someone who has opened themselves to a more precise and more honest relationship with the people around them. They see clearly, without the distortion of either naive trust or defensive suspicion. They choose carefully, without the exhaustion of either absorbing everything or managing every interaction. They love honestly, without the specific self-betrayal of allowing distorted mirrors to tell them who they are. Jung said that sensitivity sharpened into discernment is the most formidable psychological quality a human being can develop. Not because it makes you untouchable in the sense of being unreachable, but because it makes you untouchable in the sense that matters. What other people secretly feel about your success stops having access to your experience of that success. The distorted mirror loses its power to distort because the person looking into it knows the difference between the reflection and the reality, and has decided, quietly, firmly, without requiring anyone else's endorsement of the decision, that the reality is the one they are going to live from, not the one the shadow in the room would prefer they accept. Jung called that the beginning of genuine psychological power, not the power that comes from never being affected. The power that comes from seeing clearly enough that what was always affecting you from beneath the surface of every relationship you trusted no longer can. If something in this landed somewhere specific, if you thought of someone specific during any part of this, that thought is not paranoia. That is the perception Jung spent his career trying to help people trust. Share this with the empath in your life who has been feeling something off in a relationship they cannot quite name. They need the framework for what they are already sensing. And subscribe, because what comes next goes deeper into the specific psychology of why empaths attract the people they do, and how to finally break that pattern from the inside out.